The daily special added to today's menu happens to be seafood. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. Folks, I'm really excited to have production designer Joe Alves with me today in celebration of the 45th anniversary of the film, the iconic blockbuster Jaws. Joe was a crucial team player to Jaws, and not only worked on the shark, but also the overall look of the film and some of the amazing practical effects that was done. And there's a new Blu-ray and 4K that just came out in celebration of Jaws' 45th anniversary. So I really hope you'll check that out because it is packed full of extras. The picture looks beautiful. And I'm really happy to have Joe with us today because not only did we discuss Jaws, we got to talk about a little bit about his production to work on Close Encounters of the Third Kind as well. And he really has a lot of great insights, so I know you're going to dig this episode. And while you're surfing around online, I hope you'll also check out Backstory Magazine. You can find us over at backstory.net. And if you want to save some cash, you could use code SAVE5 to save $5 off a one-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. You could read us on a desktop or laptop at backstory.net. You could also use those credentials to log in onto an iPad. So remember to get your subscription at backstory.net, not on an iPad. And, you know, it would be really appreciated to have your support because we are building issue 42, which will be our new issue that was written under quarantine. And even as things are opening up, we're still going to be adding to issue 42 over the summer. So there's a lot of great stuff that's going to be in it, some of which I've been working on for years to get released. So it would be great to have your support. But now, without any further ado, let's jump into our interview with Joe from this Zoomcast podcast. And I say that because not only is this an audio podcast like you're used to, but in case you haven't checked it out yet, we are putting the Zoomcast video and audio, of course, on YouTube, on Backstory Magazine's YouTube page, so you could watch Joe and I talk. And actually, there's a few points where Joe holds up storyboards. So you probably do want to take a look at the Zoomcast over on our YouTube page because then you can get the visual reference. But now, without any further ado, let's jump into our interview about Jaws' 45th anniversary with production designer Joe Alves. So Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
My pleasure.
And, you know, it's always good to hear breaking in stories from people. And I know at the beginning of your career, you served as an illustrator on The Forbidden Planet. You also worked on The Torn Curtain, the Hitchcock movie. And I'm just curious what you could tell us of those early experiences and how you went back down this path of art directing to production designing.
First of all, Forbidden Planet, they had all of the id was farmed out to Disney, and
because it was animated. The id was animated, obviously.
Right, and I worked as an animator, but that was a unbelievable, fortunate thing. I had just turned 19. It's my second year. I finished. I was at Chenard's art school, which is now Cal Arts, and I needed a summer job. And I'm from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm down in LA. So I talked to a friend of mine. He says, "Oh, my wife's father works at Disney. Maybe he could, get you a job." And I thought maybe sweeping up or something. And he just happened to be the guy that did the hiring for the artists. And he said, "Bring your portfolio." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm ready yet, to." He said, "No, bring it in." So anyway, long story short, he said, "You're too late for the training program to learn how to draw Mickey Mouse, but I could put you right now into special effects where you draw fire and water and all that stuff." So I go into this room with this woman, and there's this paper and this light box, and I said, "What do I do?" And she said, "You flip the pages and draw in between." All right. She was working for Dwight Carlisle, who was an assistant animator, working for Josh Metter, who was like the king effects guy. He did the fire in Bambi. He did Night in Bald Mountain. He did all these incredible things, and he was doing the id for MGM. So after probably 3 weeks or so, Marion, the woman I was working for, she had to leave. So I got, normally you're a trainee for months and months, and then you're an in-betweener for years, and then you become a breakdown artist and then an assistant. That generally takes years. Well, what happened when she left, I started working directly with the assistant, Dwight Carlisle, drawing the id, and we were drawing it was wide paper because CinemaScope, it was hard to spell. Anyway, I was working for him and started doing the in-betweens on the id. And it wasn't more than a month and he had to go to the hospital. So I was promoted immediately to assisting Josh. And that was freaky because now I'm working right with the top guy and I'm drawing the id. And the thing about the id is normally you ink and paint. That was the thing then. But we didn't want that. He didn't want that line, that ink and paint line. So we had to render every cell had to be rendered, or cell was just paper. And we did 2 layers for hot, red and blue. And then they just photographed them in that color. So that was sort of my introduction to the movie business. I just boom, right up. And so I became an assistant animator. And one quick story about Disney, I'm working on Sleeping Beauty and the animated one. And there was the fairies. One of the fairies had a cookie. And I'm drawing the cookie, and this gentleman reaches over and corrects my cookie. No, it should look like this. And it's Walt Disney. And we call him
That's crazy.
Walt. So, okay, Walt. And he used to do that. And I'd meet him down the hall, walk with him. So it was just a different experience. Jumping to the Hitchcock thing, that's many years. So that was 55, 56, 57. I was at Disney and I really wanted to get into live action. So I left there and I went to work for a little theater doing sets and built up a portfolio of set designs, illustrations. And so I started as a set designer. And at that time, Jeff, there was a studio system.
Right.
So in the studio system, you have, MGM, Paramount, whatever department, whether it's art department, camera, editing, you start generally as a trainee, a junior this or whatever. And so I was a junior draftsman or junior set designer, and you get knocked around. If there's a lot of work, you're hired. And then when that's done, just the regulars stay.
Just for our viewers and listeners out there, the main difference, and I'm sure most people know this, but I'm just clarifying, is that when you're a part of the studio system, there was, as you just described, an odd job part of it, in which if one film didn't need you this week, somebody else would find something for you to do the next week, and you were gainfully employed at the studio, kind of transferring departments at will. Would that be the best way to describe it?
Exactly. And so there were the regulars. So if it was like I worked at MGM on Mutiny on the Bounty, and they needed to do boats and parts of the boat. But when that was finished, then I would be out. And the regulars would stay, and I went to, Warner Brothers, and I did some stuff on, let's see, there was a number of movies there that I did, little odd jobs on it. My Fair Lady, I think, was, anyway, but so it sounds big, but you're just doing a little part of a big movie. Eventually, I landed at Universal and became a senior set designer. And I worked on a Mad World for months and months and months.
Which was one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. Really? Every time they would show it on TV, I would watch it with my grandparents, even though it was multiple nights. And I was so happy when Criterion finally released it. And I've been going crazy to show it to my kids. But the runtime of that movie, 3 hours plus, convincing them.
Stanley Kramer. And it was interesting because I was on that for quite a while.
Yeah.
Working with the same art director. It was because let me just say something. Production designer credits, it's the same thing as art director. They only start getting production design in the 60s and 70s. But the art directors really started on Mad World, and his assistant. So I worked for his assistant for some time, Gordon Gurney. And anyway, just really quick, I drew sets, did the architectural work, and I also built models. So I built a model. You remember the gas station that falls apart?
Yes.
It just starts falling apart. So to give Stanley Kramer some kind of concept of, what to break. I did the model out of, balsa wood and illustration board. And then I had strings down below so you could pull this one and this wall would fall, I'd pull that, that would fall. And then I had this water tower, you pull that and the whole thing collapses. So I took it over to Stanley Kramer's office, and he wasn't there, but there was a young director, John Cassavetes was there. And he says, "What's this?" And I said, "Look, you pull this." So he played with it. He had a great time. Well, the sad thing is, Stanley was working out of Palm Springs. So they sent my model to the Palm Springs and they put it in his suite. The cleaning ladies came in and said, "Oh my God, they left a toy from the previous person," and they threw it away. So anyway, it was
that's got to be rough and disheartening.
but if you want to I'll get to Torrent.
Briefly Hitchcock, and then we're going to move straight to Spielberg and Jaws.
Okay, so with Hitchcock, so eventually, I have just said, working at Universal, I became an assistant art director, and I was working with an art director, Frank Arrigo, and we did Change of Habit, which was Elvis Presley's last movie, and then he got assigned to Torn Curtain, and so now I'm working with Hitchcock, and there was a production designer he brought from Germany to specifically do the ballet sequence, Hein Heckroth. But Frank was pretty much did all the sets. So I was in my office one day, and Frank and he had gone someplace, and Hein had gone someplace, and Peggy, Hitch's assistant, called me and said, "Mr. Hitchcock wants to see you." Me? Because we all worked in a team, but I never worked with him specifically.
Right.
They would talk to So anyway, I go to his office, and he says, "Joe," he says, "here's what I want you to do." And he starts drawing, but because he was an art director in England before he was director, but it looks like the pencil never left the table or the paper, just sort of like a worm crawling on it. And
right, he did title cards and a lot of stuff in the silent days.
He says, "Mr. Newman," this is Paul Newman, "comes up to the staircase and runs down the stairs. You build the stairs. Mr. Whitlock will do the matte shot, matte painting." Okay, then he comes down the stairs. That's another set. And he walks over to the registration desk and leaves. Right to left, right to left. Okay, and I said, "All right, that's fine. Now, what about the reverse shot? What about the wall here, right about there?" No, he comes down here, goes there, and goes out. And so I didn't want to question him that I was only giving him a half a set, but that was Hitchcock. He knew what he wanted. He was so into the art department and storyboards and planning it. By the time he got there to shoot it during the day, the shooting, he was sort of like, "Okay, I know what to do." So unlike a lot of directors where you will build huge sets and you never see them.
Right.
Because they do the planning when they get on the set and they say, "Oh, let's see how I'll shoot it here." Where Hitch would plan it before, so we would only build what we needed, which was a sort of a different kind of thinking, which is really a very cost-conscious kind of thing.
Right.
But that was Hitch. It was he planned everything, and so it was fun. He would come down in the morning, he would go to coffee, we would all stand around and listen to his very funny jokes. But we said, now you laugh. Oh, yeah. Anyway, it was an interesting character.
Sorry, go on.
Paul Newman, yeah. It was great.
Sorry to interrupt. So relationships are everything. And now that we're going to get to your relationship with Spielberg, obviously you must have met on Night Gallery, because I know that you were working on Night Gallery and he directed an episode. Is that where you guys first formed your friendship?
Yeah, I did 3 seasons of Night Gallery, and that was a great training program for me. And I had some good directors there, John Badham and Jeannot Schwark and stuff.
Great show.
Jeannot did most of the, more than anybody else. Anyway, I met Stephen on that, and then we did 2 episodes of a show called The Psychiatrist, and it was 6 episodes, and then it was gone,
Yeah.
And I built some beautiful sets for it. That anyway, I developed a relationship with Stephen, and we were very comfortable. And he was just at that time learning the process of, because he was a filmmaker from as a kid, grab a camera and shoot. Now is how do you use these people, you know? And so when he got Sugarland Express, there was no sets basically, but I scouted all these roads and things before. Sometimes before him, I got on a helicopter and went for miles and miles just trying to find a road that went like nowhere this way and nowhere that way. I mean, and then I put this huge sign with all these different directions, and so he would do things like that. So we developed a really good relationship on Sugarland. And
just before you move on, what was one of your fondest memories on Sugarland? Because I like the film and I want to get to Jaws, but just one of your fondest memories of just when everything went right one day, or by the way, when everything went wrong is fine too.
No, it was good. I'll tell you, here's the thing. Goldie was the sweetheart. What a sweetheart. Vilmos Zsigmond had done some pretty big movies, and his relationship with me was sort of odd because I was a television guy and he was a feature guy.
Right.
And we had it was a parking lot with a drive-in theater, and we called it Big John Park because Big John, this was in San Antonio, Texas. He used to be a film representative there, film commission, big character. So anyway, Vilmos was having trouble shooting it because of the lights and stuff and trying to get thing. And I said, well, what you need is a giant silk, to cover the whole thing. And he said, well, I don't have that stuff. I said, I'll do it for you. I'll get you, So I came up and I covered the whole darn thing. And
we're talking about a silk to diffuse the light, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and it was sort of blew him away. He said, oh, I didn't know you could do that stuff. Our relationship on Close Encounters became really close because
we'll get there, and I can't wait.
Yeah, because we're talking about a lot of lights. Anyway, so that developed a very comfortable relationship. Stephen asked him to do Jaws, but he didn't want to do a shark movie. So,
well, getting to Jaws, that's a good segue. It's important it's an important moment in life when you get your first, really big promotion. And that's the first movie that you're officially credited as a production designer. At what point did you realize you were going to be the production designer? Do you still remember being anointed as such?
Oh, no, I didn't realize that until I saw the credits.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because to me, it made no difference. I was the art director. There was no production design. Sure. I was running the thing. And basically, I was on that movie before Spielberg.
Tell us about that. What was it like in its earliest incubation?
What happened was I was a staff art director working on some television movie. And I get a call from David Brown. And he said, my wife, Helen Gurley Brown, who was editor of Cosmopolitan magazine at the time, has just read these galley sheets to a book by a new young writer, and Peter Benchley. And so she thinks it might make a pretty good movie, and so he said, if I send you the galleys, could you just go through and do some illustrations on all the shark activities? So they didn't have a charge number. They didn't have a movie. They didn't have a deal, so they couldn't pay me. So I went to the head of the art department, who gives you the work, distributes the work. And I told him, David Brown and Dick Zanuck were big guys. They did Sting and Butch Cassidy and stuff. And Alex Galitzin, he said, well, do your regular show, and then if you have time, do your illustrations, and nobody has to know. Because basically, you're a set designer, illustrator, or art director. As an art director, you could do an occasional set design or, drafting or illustration. But if you're going to do a lot, then they'll have an illustrator do it. But since there's no charge money, and
just to clarify for our viewers, sorry to interrupt. When you say there's no charge money, what you mean is there was no production to charge your salary and the materials to.
Yeah,
So
right.
it was a point of stasis kind of before the project is technically official.
When you get a go, then you have a number.
Yeah.
And then all the departments could charge to that number.
Right on.
So they had no deal. There was no deal. It was a shark movie. And so I ended up doing like 30 illustrations. Just a second, I'll show you.
Oh, wow.
Well, do you have
That's great.
book?
Yeah. We could take photos and put them on the backstory.net website too.
Yeah, there's,
Oh, wow.
illustrations like that, the boy on the raft. And
that's fantastic.
So, oh yeah, we never shot it this way, but that was pretty dramatic.
Oh, wow.
That was the way we had shot it at the time. Anyway, but basically,
Those are beautiful.
Here's Ben Garner and
wow.
the shark. Are you getting that? All right.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this later.
Thank you so much for showing us those.
There's a lot of stuff in here, storyboards and stuff. We'll talk about it. So I did all these storyboards, and I would go over to Stephen. He had a cabana there, so he was under contract, but he didn't have anything lined up, and he was thinking about doing a pirate movie. And Zanuck and Brown were thinking about this other director who kept calling it a whale, and so they got rid of him. Anyway, long story short, if I could make it short, we had a meeting once I had all the drawings done in Marshall Green's office. And Marshall was the head of production. He had an office on the top of the Black Tower. And he lived on a boat, so he was sort of a water guy. So he was attracted to this project. So we had a meeting, and basically, Stephen, I would show him the different storyboards and stuff like that, and or illustrations. And he said, if we did this, we should do a big full-size shark, bigger than, in the real ocean, not in,
on a soundstage.
On a soundstage. And what was that movie with Spencer Tracy and the big marlin? I can't remember now, but it just looked terrible.
Bug me, but yes, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the title either. I'm trying to look on my phone.
So, in any case, that movie, we looked at that, and it just looked terrible. The big, So we had the meeting, and Stephen was brought on. Zanuck and Brown was there, and all the department heads were there. Camera, effects, art department. So basically, I showed my whole spiel, and the shark does this, and the shark does that. And then I said, Stephen and I talked about building a 25-foot shark, and we wanted to shoot it in the real ocean. And so Marshall pointed to the effects people and said, what do you think? And they said, we can't do that. It's never been done. We didn't need to test it. It would take a year and a half to do it, to try it in the ocean. And besides, we have bigger movies like the Hindenburg, and blah, blah, blah. So Marshall got a little upset at the attitude and said, pounded his fist and said, Jaws could be a bigger movie than the Hindenburg. And everybody laughed. Of course, it was George C. Scott, and anyway, so basically this is what happened. Everybody left. I was collecting my drawings. I started to walk out, and Marshall said, can you make the shark? Can you get the shark made? And being ambitious, I said, certainly can. I certainly could try anyway, He says, well, take it off the lot. This is a big deal. Don't do it on the lot. Find some people to do it. So
basically, sorry to interrupt, but again, this puts you in a situation where you have no charge by number. So does that mean that Marshall was privately funding the construction?
No, we got a charge number once he gave me the okay.
Even though it was off the lot.
Oh yeah, I could take it off
Okay.
the lot. We
Okay.
had enough
Okay.
to charge to pay people.
Got it. Good.
So
Good.
it
Good.
was like doing an independent thing, you know.
All right. It's just a big deal. So go on. So you went off the lot to start constructing the shark.
Well, I had to find somebody to do it. And I went to Joe Lombardi, who did the Godfather thing. He says he was busy, but it would take a year and a half. I went to Disney. They said it would take a long time, but they wouldn't take it to the ocean. They would take blah, 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 blah. And then somebody told me about this guy, Bob Matty, who did the giant squid in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And
it's important to note for that squid that it was around real water, and there was a lot of
Old Man in the Sea.
Old Man in the Sea, yes, with Spencer Tracy.
Okay, so I got Bob was great, and he said, yeah, we could do it, and blah blah blah. He was so enthusiastic, and he says, come back. I'll come back in a couple of days. So he came back, and the drawing is somewhere in here, where he did a wire kind of shark, and you pulled this and it opened and like that. You pulled the wire and mouth open and closed. And he says, of course, do something much more complicated, but that's the concept. And so then we had to get specialists. We got Roy. Let's see, we got a number of people. Roy Arbogast did special skins. This was interesting because he was breaking breakaway bottles. So we needed new, fabrics and stuff so that it wouldn't break and it wouldn't, So we got that going. And that's basically how it started. So I got that team working. That would be December. I went scouting for locations, and Stephen was working on the script. Eventually had written a first draft. Stephen was working on that. And I met Peter in New York, and I said, where did you write this for? And he said, nothing specifically, just because he's an East Coast guy, conglomeration of places, Sag Harbor, Covington, Montauk, whatever. And so then he pointed out Nantucket. He said, go there. My mother and father lived there. And I said, oh, how about this island? Martha's Vineyard. He'd never been in Martha's Vineyard. And so he didn't know, I don't think there's anything. But virtually what I did is, this was December. I drove all the way to the East Coast, Long Island, and then I went to Massachusetts, down to Woods Hole. I took a boat to Nantucket, and the water was so rough they turned around. And then so I'm there in Woods Hole. I see a boat to Martha's Vineyard, and so I took that, and I loved it. Edgartown, Menemsha, it just worked. Oh, and let me tell you, Bob had an idea. We had to do three sharks, left to right, right to left, because the backside would be where we could get all the mechanics. And those were towed. And then he had one on a platform, a big platform that you would sink, and it had a track, and you would lift. And so that one we could hit the boat and all that. So I was also looking for a location of a bay with 25-foot depth, with a sandy bottom and a very small tide. So I couldn't do that on the East Coast or West Coast because the tides are like 12, 14 feet. But here I am in Martha's Vineyard, and I see this beautiful bay. And I checked my oceanographical maps. It's 25 feet and a 2-foot tide. And Edgartown is perfect. And Menemsha is great for quint and blah, blah, blah. So normally, in the old days, we had 35 millimeters, and you take these pan shots and you go develop the film. It takes a couple days, and then you line them up and put them on illustration boards. And so then you present it to the director, and Stephen loved it. And Dick Zanuck was not too crazy about it because of the Chappaquiddick thing and the Kennedy thing and the problem.
Right.
All the rich people that live there might not be happy. But Stephen was very, very smart in that he hired just about all the selectmen and put them in the movie, so they felt part of it.
Well, and you renamed the town
Yeah.
for the
And
fictional name. I guess one question to ask is at this point you would have seen all the iterations of the script that were going around between Peter, obviously between Carl Gottlieb when he came on, and Steven's own rewrites that he was doing, which officially became uncredited, but of course he was doing them all along. What was something that was an interesting element from an early version of the script that you saw that never ended up in the movie, but was fun for you as an artist to play around with and design how it would have looked or seen, or the sets it would have been on?
pretty much, let me just say something. I want to just show you.
Sure.
Um, this is a set breakdown.
Wow.
I mean, I go through the script and there's page by page by page. So this is all in the book.
Right.
And so this was pretty much on Benchley's, because Carl didn't come in until a couple weeks before.
Right.
So I was very concerned in doing this, which was the shark mechanism, getting Frank Wormser, who was on the drafting room, and he was an engineer from Lockheed, put him with Bob Matty. So my focus was primarily finding a location. And for the first time as an art director, I was really head of the effects department in the sense I was putting everybody together.
What was your challenge? I mean, that's a good place to start on the shark, which became known as Bruce, correct? Like the shark was dubbed Bruce. And, the story of Jaws, as everyone knows, is that there were a lot of trial and error going along. And at a certain point, and I'm going to let you come back to all this, but at a certain point, some of the things that were plotted out in the script were just physically not possible, considering the breakdowns of the shark. And that's where the heightened sense of suspense that we all know came into the movie, because sometimes less was more.
Yeah,
and I'm just curious, but yes, please go back, please fill in all the holes. I know that you had a lot of trouble.
Totally untrue.
Okay, please correct me.
See this? These are the storyboards.
Yes.
I did hundreds of them. Every shark shot is there. So we did not get any shark shots because it didn't work. First of all, when everybody told us that it would take a year and a half to do the shark, to test it in the water and all that, the guys, by the time I put together, they started working on it in December '73. The book came out in February of '74. The studio said, we're going to start shooting in 2 months. Where's my year to build it? And I appealed to them. I said, how am I going to get the shark? No, we're going to start shooting because we want, and they all wanted to take advantage of the popularity of the book. And Stephen pushed them from April to May. Now we're talking about doing water stuff in New England. It was so cold. And so Bob Matty is like crazy working to build these 3 sharks. And he sent them to Martha's Vineyard as soon as they got it to wiggle. But they weren't painted yet. They were nothing. And what the problem was the salt water. Once you get in the salt water, the electronics just get eaten away.
Didn't it affect the paint and the materials used?
Yeah, and so we painted it with number 40 silica sand, so it wouldn't come off. The water wouldn't come off like a balloon, So we were doing that, and Stephen was shooting everything, walk and talk, everything that he could without the shark. And so I would go to Bob. Once we were finished, I'd go to Bob and I'd say, what do you think would work today? He says, I think the left to right shark is looking pretty good. So then I'd go to Stephen and he would go through.
Find the right board. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, all these illustrations. And he would say, okay, see, that's number 214 A, B, C, whatever. So then we would distribute that to everybody and they knew we're going to do the shark running by the boat. And I would say, Stephen, if it doesn't work, it's a test. But if it works, we shoot it. Well, that was an incredible shot. That was when it goes by the boat and it looks so big. And oh, let me tell you. So in the process of making this thing, I did a 4-foot model of a white shark. And after doing all these sketches, which I really hadn't studied white sharks, it was just, I found a ichthyologist, Leonard Campagno, in the Steinhardt Oceanographical thing, San Francisco. He worked with me. We came down and he detailed that thing so it was right on. And then we did some tests, and I talked to Ron and Valerie Taylor, who did Blue Water White Death. And Valerie saying, Joe, you don't have to move it very much. When they're so big, they don't wiggle their tail, they just slide. So we got it practiced so that when it came by, it just sort of sauntered by. And it's like, you know, that thing's big, but when it's going to attack, it's going to hit. So basically, the talk was we didn't use the shark because it didn't work. Not true. The people were saying, I had critics, oh, you use the barrels instead of the shark.
The
Yes,
yellow buoys, the tracking buoys, yeah.
Yeah, and I painted them yellow because normally they're black. But if you see my original sketches based on the book, there's a shark with these barrels because you shoot them, and that controls them. So unlike just using the barrels became the shark. It was a Hitchcock kind of thing. Here's a barrel, and then he can't go down, boom. And let me tell you, to get the thing to go down, the day before we had to put a 2-ton cement weight with a shiv, and the thing goes through so that nothing was easy. But it was difficult, and it took a lot of time to develop it. But we got every shot shark.
Hello, I'm breaking in really quick to remind you that you could save $5 off a 1-year subscription of Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net by using coupon code SAVE5, all one word. It's really easy. You know, your support is crucial to us, and we are building a new issue 42, and a 1-year subscription also gets you access to our previous year's worth of issues, and it's an archive that we're actually continually adding to, so we will be adding more older issues over time. But look, these are wild times. Your support means everything to us. I love being there for you with our podcast and now Zoomcast as well. So I hope you'll check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. If you're on the fence about what we're about, you could check out our free issue there as well. You can read it on a desktop or laptop or via the Backstory app via an iPad. And it would be awesome to have your support. That's all I have to say. You could find out what's inside each issue on our website, and you could also test drive us. So remember, coupon code SAVE5 will save you $5 over there. And that's all I could say. Let's get back to our interview with production designer Joe Alves on the 45th anniversary of Jaws, which has been re-released as a Blu-ray and 4K and looks absolutely amazing. Picture, sound, and of course, a packed full of amazing extras, so I hope you check it out there as well. If for some reason you missed the fact that we're doing this as a Zoomcast podcast, all it means is that you could check us out on YouTube at the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, and you could actually watch the Zoomcast interview. Of course, we're still posting it in iTunes and Spotify as an audio podcast, but at some points in this episode, Joe has used visual cues. He showed storyboards. He showed some production art. You'll be able to see all that on the YouTube page, the Backstory Magazine YouTube page as well. But let's jump back into it with Joe, and thanks for tuning in. What do you remember working with Carl? Because Carl was writing as the movie was being filmed as well, so that would change some of your shots inevitably. So what do you remember about coordinating with Carl?
Well, of course, I worked on 3 movies with Carl.
Right.
1, 2, 3, you know, when I directed that. Well, it was pretty much, I was working on the storyboards with Stephen. Verna Fields was very active. She won the Academy Award for editing. She was Mother Cutter. She'd been around for quite a while. What changed with Carl's script, basically, was less. It didn't really affect the ocean stuff. When they leave to go out, you know, that pretty much, we did, a lot of that was storyboarded and ideas and stuff like that. But, you know, Carl, yeah, what they did is they took away a lot of the book stuff. What they had, the relationship between the ichthyologist and Brody's wife, they had an affair. They got rid of that. They made it more linear. So, and some of the shots, people say, you know, like the girl, Chrissy, when she gets, you know, we drug her around, no shark there. We didn't need it. You pretty well knew the shark was under there. When the little wharf goes out like that, and the guy swim, and he turns around and comes at you. Anyway.
Sorry. Just because you were focusing on it, I was going to ask about it. Was that the same basic shark mechanism to move the broken part of the wharf around the same way that you would move the shark around? It was the same mechanism, right?
Well, it was towed, but it
was towed. Okay.
Yeah, the shark stuff stayed with the shark. You know?
Right. Okay, that makes sense that it was towed. What do you remember as the biggest day of disappointment, in which, you know, we all regard this as a classic, but I know it was not easy to make. What do you remember a day where everything just kind of wasn't going your way with Bruce, or with the weather and just the conditions of shooting at sea?
Oh, when we brought out the big platform shark, and we had all the executives there, and we floated it out, and we were going to sink it, and it flipped over. And it was like the whole big thing flipped over. And we was like, oh, no. And there was, of course, the producers, there was, Marshall Green, there was the head of production. Anyway, it was very, very disappointing. It was hard, you know. I mean, there was a couple of things. Let me say this: Dick Zanuck was concerned about if the shark ever was going to work, so he wanted some real shark footage. So we sent,
and that's in the credit that you had some real shark footage. That's in the credits of the movie.
Okay, I'll give you that story. We sent a team to Australia. And Valerie Taylor said, Joe, the biggest sharks we're going to get down there is 16 feet. And our shark was 25. And so I said, okay, so I'll need to send somebody that's supposed to be the Dreyfus character.
Right, for the underwater cage.
So I found a little guy, maybe 4'6", a stunt guy, said he was a scuba diver and all that. So I had to build smaller tanks, you know. And I bought a small cage. So we sent that down. I didn't go on the location. I was too busy doing the other stuff. They put him down there. The 16-foot shark comes at him, and he freaks out and sucks all the air out the tank immediately. And they bring him up, and he goes and hides and says, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. Hanging over the boat is a sort of a breakaway full-size shark cage, and the 16-footer goes in, and it just starts breaking it to pieces, and it gets sort of stuck in there, and then it comes out, and we see that footage, and we said, that's incredible. You know, but they realize Hooper's supposed to be eaten then, because he dies in the book. So everyone pretty much, wow, Hooper's got to live. So what happens, he's got an injection thing, he's going to inject the shark. He drops it, and he dives down to go get it, and he's got his air tank.
And that's one of the famous rewrites from while the film was in production.
The rewrite was totally, Hooper's going to live. And so there were a couple of shots. Another thing, I couldn't get the shark going away because you see all the mechanism. See, so much today you could CGI out all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we used a couple of shots there. We didn't want to use too much because our shark had its own character. This is an interesting thing about people could CGI it so clean today, but our shark had certain jaws, and it had gills,
Gills
kind of thing. But it had a character that people seem to just really love about it. And
when your stunt person wouldn't do it, how did you get somebody else in the cage for the rest of the shots you needed?
We never did. No. Then what we did is after we finished shooting in Martha's Vineyard, we went to MGM tank and we got a stunt guy, and all that stuff was shot in the tank at MGM.
With the mechanical shark.
With the mechanical shark. So then we could see the shark and we could interplay that with
right. You can match.
So yeah, that was when we wrapped, we had to come back and, you know, a couple things when we wrapped.
Wait, you're talking about wrapping shooting?
When we wrapped at the location, when we finished.
Okay, wait, can I ask you more questions before we get to the wrap?
Oh, no, because I'm going to come back.
Okay, good.
I just want to mention a couple of things, you know. So we were not heroes. We were over budget, over schedule. Now, a lot of the people, because we were over budget, over schedule, the producers, they weren't nice. Even Steven at one time, which he had later apologized, was blaming Bob Matty, the shark didn't work and all that stuff. So that became a big thing. It was terrible. They started pushing to battle. I mean, Bob saved it because he made a shark, but they started blaming him. So going back to, okay, we're on location, and something I'll tell you later is when the shark came up, like on the boat, and it made terrible noises, you know. And so when Steven would say cut, the crew would laugh, you know. And so that was always in my mind when I was seeing the movie. Was the audience going to laugh at this shark, or were they going to be, you know? So that was always what I was thinking before we went to see the thing. A big problem was that Steven was very, very firm about not wanting to see any other boats out there. So they were totally isolated. He had Quint break the radio so Brody couldn't call in and say, come and get us. You had the incredible relationship between the, you know, the ichthyologist and the owner. So now when I scouted Martha's Vineyard, that was December 17th, 1973, in the winter, and it was just snow on the beach and nobody out there. They're just empty. Well, come July and August, when we started shooting the shark, there were boats from Hyannis just covering the horizon. And Steven was steadfast. He's not going to shoot, you know, a master shot with boats out there. So we'd send people, you know, to Rudd, could you move the boat? Some people really cooperated. Others were just, no, I'm going to stay on where I want. So the studio started getting very concerned about this, you know, young director. How come he's not shooting? How come he's not shooting? Well, there's boats out there. You know, well, what the hell? Well, what the hell was, today we would just get rid of them with CGI, right? So Steven was 27, just turned 28. Steadfast. This is the way we're going to do it. And I got to tell you, you know, it worked because we had that isolation there. One of the shots that really thrilled me, because I would see the dailies and I said, God, the scene in the cabin of where they're comparing the scars with Shaw and Dreyfus, and I said, that is incredible scene, Steven. You've done such a good job. I said, wouldn't it be great if we could have the shark come into that space so that you could see how big, because he would take up the whole space where these guys were sitting. And he said, yeah, great idea, Joe. I said, yeah, but I don't have a breakaway boat. I had two boats, one that totally redid, and then one that Bob Matty could sink, but I didn't have a breakaway cabin. But I opened my mouth, so now I had to come up with something. So I'm on an island, and we don't have a studio with balsa wood and breakaway glass and all that. Somehow I found enough stuff to make 3 window units. And this is like one of the last shots that Steven did. And the crew is just buggy. You know, they're just tired. They want to go home. And Steven wanted to go cut it and, you know, start doing that and get back to the studio. So the first shot it came in and it wiggled and it went out and everybody laughed and it didn't work and it broke it. The second, so I've got 2 left. The second one, it came in and it wasn't very good and it was stuck there and just hold. And I went to Stephen and I said, Stephen, I only have 1 more. He said, could you get whatever you can with the shark leaving, you know, with the tank in the mouth, and then hopefully we could get a great, he says, yeah, good idea, Joe, that's what we'll do. And so he got the thing leaving, it was perfect. So then I called Bob Marty. I said, Bob, this is it. You got to hit that thing, got to hit it hard, it's got to be perfect. And so he revved it up. I don't know what he did, but boy, that thing comes busting in and it was perfect. And that was it, you know.
And that's when Brody puts the tank in his mouth.
Yeah, but we did it on take 2. So we had it, and then
right.
the whole thing in continuity, because it worked.
That makes sense.
So everybody's leaving. Stephen asked me, because I work so close with this storyboards, everything, if I would direct a sequence, and that's a little kitten boy getting eaten on the raft. And so it was my first directing thing, and it was difficult because I had to get the barge, the shark barge, and all that stuff, and it was foggy, so I had to do it with radar, you know, make sure everything was, and so that was it. And then we came home, and as I say, they didn't know, they didn't like us. They took the sharks and threw it in the back lot, let them rot, and they sold the Brody boat to some grip. And then
wait, I want to go back to production for a second. I'm sorry to interrupt, because just as a production designer, so you know, a few questions, and I was told it's okay to go a few minutes over by the publicist as long as that's okay with you.
Sure.
Quint's lair. Actually, I want to start with somewhere else. I noticed on the new Blu-ray release celebrating 45 years that they have the deleted scenes there, which have been out before, but something I don't remember seeing was this shot of Quint's truck. And he opens the door and it says Quince on it, and it has like a shark on it. And I want a t-shirt of that. Was that something that you drew? That logo?
I drew
the shark on the door of the truck?
If that's the same one with the shark with the guy inside the mouth? No. I can't remember, because there was one on the blackboard.
Yes. That's different.
That's different. Now, I can't, probably the prop man probably did it.
Okay. Well, that looked great, but I want to give you kudos though, because Quint's lair, as I'm calling it, Quint's shop, has
This was Quint's. Where is it? Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the interior of his shop that has jaws all over the place, you know, looming at you, and so many things. That was like a great setting. And I'm curious what you remember about designing that.
You see, there's John Dwyer, who's the set decorator, and he had shark mouth all over the place. Yeah, that was
that book you were just holding. Is that a Taschen book? Is that one of the?
This is a book that just got released this year.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen it yet.
Joe Alves, Designing Jaws.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Dennis Prince. So I would recommend anybody. There's some great shots.
Yeah.
You know, that's interested in Jaws, because it has all the storyboards and
that's awesome.
So it's just came out. And
so Quint's shop. Do you remember anything about designing that? And then I really want to get to talking about the Orca, which was amazing.
Yeah. When I first scouted Edgartown, and then I went to Menemsha, and I climbed up on a hill there, and I looked, and there was all these fisherman shacks. And then at the very end was an empty lot with a bunch of trash on it. And I said, oh, that's perfect for Quint Shack. Now, what I wanted to do was make Quint Shack bigger, taller, because he's such a character. So I made a model, and I got a lot of problems. The selectman said, you can't build it, it's too tall, there's restrictions. And I said, it's not real. We're going to shoot it, and then it'll be gone. And I had to go to Boston and show that to some film commission people there, zoning people. And it was constantly zoning. And then we had to put up $500,000 guarantee bond. that we would remove the whole thing, tear it down, and put the garbage back on. And the garbage is still there. So yeah, it was, I had designed so many sets. It was just, I wanted to have a lot of character to it.
Right. And it was beautiful. I want to get to the Orca now. That's Quint's boat. And, aside from it just being people would expect, I'm sure even in the day, that shark hunters would use a sophisticated boat like what Richard Dreyfuss's character was using for the first dive, where he finds the dead body below. It had lights, it had radar, all these great things. Using Quint's old rusty boat was it really added character. It reinforced Quint's character, but you did something amazing in which it becomes an iconic sinking ship after the attacks from Jaws. And you see it breaking away in pieces. The continuity is beautiful about how it's sinking. And even at the end of the movie, Chief Brody's final shot is right as the mast is on its side. So I just want to talk about your designs and how that came together to understand that the boat was going to be sinking in stages over the course of what seemed to be about eight or 9 minutes in the film.
Okay, so I wanted to give it character, and we bought a boat. Tom Jordan was there, production first assistant, and Bob Matty and I went up the coast looking for a boat, and we found this boat in Boston, and it was the right size. It was white, and Steve would say, "Yeah, it's okay, but I want bigger windows and more character." So I had a pulpit, that he could go out on.
Right.
I had a crow's nest, and I just gave it a lot of character.
Yeah.
Painted black. And see, I painted it maroon. I didn't want to have any red. I didn't use any red, orange, off red, because I wanted the red to be when the blood came.
What did you use for blood in the movie, in the water?
Oh,
Was it
I
just
don't know.
paint?
Whatever. No, that would be whatever prop man or effects people would
Okay,
have.
okay.
To get rid of. One thing we did, we're really careful. We didn't use hydraulics. We used pneumatics, because with the shark, a hose broke, there'd be oil all over the place.
Yeah.
So anyway, that gave great character, because the pulpit, he'd go out and shoot the shark as it came underneath. And then the tower, the seat where it came down, then Brody could go out there. And so it's just a question of reading it and talking about it. And so I gave it this character. And then when Bob built the second boat, and it had barrels just like on the platform that would float, and you flip it up, and then it would take water. So he would take a little water on this side, it would come down, and then it would come back up. So it was a process of, okay, the shark, Shaw is slipping back down, and the shark is biting and grabs a knife, and he gets eaten. Okay, so the boat had to go this way. And then it starts to sink this way. In the meantime, Dreyfuss is already gone. You remember
Right, yeah.
He's gone. Things are so Brody.
So they had already filmed his final scene of them kicking back to the shore.
When no.
By the time Dreyfuss was gone, they'd already filmed Dreyfuss's final scenes.
Well, no, yeah, but I mean the character was gone.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant he was wrapped from the ship.
Because we have more to shoot with him.
Yeah,
we had
okay.
to go back to LA and shoot with his boat. We did that.
Yes.
But then, yeah, okay, so here's what happened.
Yeah, tell us about the sinking of the Orca.
So the Orca, Bob had it so that he could control it with the barrels. And then we had a shark's head. And in Martha's Vineyard, there's a lot of squid, a lot of, calamari. And I filled it with squid. And when it blew up, all that was squid. And that was an incredible shot, because it worked. We didn't have take two on that.
What did you do when the ship was sinking, though, in places? Was there like underwater mechanics so that you could reset it to come back up? If
Yeah, then you just put the air back in. And
yeah.
Come back up. So these barrels, they're like this, and then they would take water and it would start to sink. And then if we turn it this way, then it would lose the water to come back up.
Did you
So
build the Orca in pieces for those breakaway scenes? Were those just extra pieces that you had that were mimics of what you would design for the interior of the Orca to
no,
be
we
put
didn't
out
have
of the
any.
water?
No, everything was pretty much together. The only thing was just those pieces of the window that we did. Uh, but it just started. It just went down. I mean, we broke a window, and the barrel hit the window and stuff. And the barrels. Well, that was hard too, because then
I was going to ask about that because you have to drag them pretty fast to show the speed and the threat.
yes, we did, and we had to drag them, and then, as I say, to sink them, we had to have huge weights down
Right.
below. And then I wanted like a sort of like a shotgun where you bolt, and that one barrel goes out, boom, the other one comes in place on the deck, boom, the other one. So yeah, it was a lot of thought. It was a lot of process doing it. But the thing is, to make people happy in Martha's Vineyard, I took a painter and a carpenter, and that was it from Hollywood, and a decorator. And all the boat stuff was built by boat guys in Martha's Vineyard. And Quinn Shack was all built by local construction people. So they were very happy because they got work. And so the only problem we had is the people that owned the Kelly House and the other places, they were very happy when we were there April, May. Come June, then that was their season. So we had to find other places, and then the season left and we were still there, we were there forever.
What do you remember as being one of your most stressful moments? Like, it's a high intense shoot. Things are working, things are not working. What do you remember as just a day where you really had to rise to meet the creative challenges of your task at hand?
It was almost every day. I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
it wasn't really one day. It was constantly. I would, okay. Once we were out on the boat, and I'd go to Stephen, and we start talking about storyboards, and I'd go back to my office. I'd storyboard. So I didn't have to sit out on the boat. I learned what that was later when I directed all the second unit of Jaws 2, where I would sit on a boat for 11 hours and wait for the thing to work, and with the helicopter, and that took 3 days to get one shot. So you just sit there. But the time, whenever the shark was used, I was there. And like when Chrissy was being pulled, we had 3 guys on each rope to pull her. I was on one rope. So I was there a lot. I was always busy. Stressful was just going back after we wrapped, go to Bill Gilmore's office, who was the production manager, and we said, what are we going to do tomorrow? Well, let's see, what's the weather? What shots do we have? What's working? That was the stress. Once we got all the walk and talk, and we had all the storyboards up on the copies in the production office, and we'd go and say, is this shark working? I don't, Bob, is that, no, I'm having trouble. And you ask Bob a simple question, and he'd give you this answer. Well, this solenoid wasn't working, and the thing, blah, 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 blah. I said, what's working tomorrow, Bob? Oh, and then I would go through, and we would find out, and then we would talk to Stephen. Stephen, we got this, okay. So actually, Jeff, every day was pretty stressful.
Oh, of course.
I mean, I had fun. I met a very pretty girl and people, it was an island, and, but I had a little apartment I was living in. And so there was good times when we wrapped in the evenings. It was a beautiful place, but it was a lot of stress. And then, of course, we weren't finished until we got home, and we shot Dreyfus and the looking for. Oh, that's an interesting thing. Let me tell you quickly. So Dreyfus and Scheider go out, and he goes down and he finds a tube. The head. So we come back, and Stephen says they had a screening. He says, I got 4 screens. I think I could get 5, Joe, if I could get the head coming out of that hole in the boat. So I said, okay. So I a shop. I do woodwork and stuff for fun. So I made a hull with a hole in it. I also made another hole where the shark is hitting, show me the way to go home, boom, boom, and they want to see. So we shot that in my driveway with a hose and the water squirting through the thing breaking. I mean, this is a big movie. Shot one in my driveway, and then we took the head. Somebody stole it from the makeup department, and they got an underwater camera. We took it to Verna Field's swimming pool, and we got the head coming out.
That was in her swimming pool.
Yeah.
So you put the part of the set right there that's supposed to be the crack hole.
I built a hole about 6 feet with a hole. And
that's fantastic.
Got somebody on the back to put the head there.
And you're doing it as a night shoot, so you could get away with a lot because it's supposedly at night.
Yeah, but you see it pretty well, you know.
Oh no, totally.
Yeah. So now the second screening was. First screening was in Texas. Second screening was in Lakewood.
And these are the test screenings you're talking about now.
This is the audience screening.
Right.
Yeah. And I was sitting there with the crew and Stephen and Sid Sheinberg and Lou Wasserman.
And is this your first time seeing it?
Yes. And going back to the shark making noise, I figured they're going to laugh when the shark comes up. And they didn't laugh. They screamed and screamed. And the people that had no desire to make this movie, they almost canceled it 4 times.
Right.
They went, oh my God. They all collected them into the men's room or something and said, we got to make this a big summer release. So 450 theaters is not a lot today, but that was huge then. And they didn't really do big summer releases. They did it more at the time of the Academy Awards. So
Jaws, as for any of our audience listeners that don't know, or our viewers, Jaws became technically one of the first blockbusters.
Yeah,
it was that rollout that did it.
Yeah. And so we were over budget about twice, from 450 to about 750. It made the money back within a few days, and it just kept going up, and it changed everything. It changed the way we did Close Encounters, because when we started on Close Encounters, briefly, Columbia executive John Veach says, this is a small little sci-fi, maybe $3 million. Well, as Jaws grew, Stephen's concepts grew, my sets grew to the biggest set ever built at the time, with football field wide and football. And so when you're
talking about the biggest set is the end set where they're all there when the UFO comes down.
Yeah. In fact, Stephen to this day, because just in February he did a tribute. We had something, and he said it's still the biggest set he's ever worked on. But because then Jaws gives you the momentum and the power. That's Hollywood. You got a success. So. And then of course, with 2, they hired a director, and then they fired the director, and then it went on, and then they did that just at one point. We built the shark away from the studio. We spent about $250,000. When I got out, finished Close Encounters, and I went. And they told me they wanted me to do Jaws 2 and blah, blah. They had already started building the shark. They already spent $2 million.
Wow.
Because it was on the studio lot.
Yeah.
It's Jaws 2. That made so much money. Let's just throw the expenditure. So.
And then you directed Jaws 3.
I directed Jaws 3. Yeah. Verna Fields said, that Al Landsberg, who was a television guy, bought the rights to it, because the studio didn't think Jaws, they needed another, because they weren't doing sequels then. They did 2, but that was it. And Zanuck and Brown didn't want anything to do with it. So Verna says, Joe, they were going to do Jaws 3, People Zero.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because, I published a magazine called Backstory, and we did a whole article about that, and they let us publish the script because it was going to actually be a comedy. Jaws 3, People Zero, and it just got nixed.
Well, what happened was this. I was working on a thing called The Ninja in New York. It was a bestseller book. And I worked on it for 7 months. Irv Kershner was the director. And was for Fox. Fox got bought out and they canceled everything that wasn't. So I got back to the studio and Verna said, Joe, you gotta help this franchise. They were going to do this Jaws for People's Ear, and it was making fun of the people that made their biggest success.
It was a parody, like Airplane and Naked Gun later became.
Yeah,
It was in that genre.
Their biggest movie to make fun of the people that made it. And Joe Dante was going to direct it, and I think Spielberg said, "You do it, and I'll never do anything with it."
Right, he was mad. Did you ever read it though? Did you ever actually see a draft of the script?
Yes, I had it. It was hard to read because it was personal, I mean, and to make fun. So they canceled that. Then I went to Landsberg and he said, he's going to do this movie, blah, blah. I said, we have to build some sharks. He said, oh, no, I have a lot of stock footage of sharks. I said, well, no. Anyway, bottom line, he said, you want to produce? I said, no, I'll direct it. I don't. He said, well, just start working with the writer. So I went and scouted locations and I found this oceanographical place, this ocean park, and they had an underwater 3D going through, water and it was really good. It had great depth. So I came back. Richard Mathers was a writer at first. And he said, what, Jaws in 3D? I said, no. Jaws 3D. You take the onus off the third by adding a D, and so I got back and I made a drawing of the shark, Jaws 3D, and Landsberg flipped out. And we went to showed it to Wasserman and all the people. Okay, fine, you're directing it. Go ahead. Well, fine, except I was working with a television producer who thought if things should be quick, and I said, no, we got to build a shark. We got to build a bigger shark because we have a guy inside the shark called Simon Clarkadale. And, well, we got to get new cameras. Oh, no, we're going to use the same old cameras. Well, they were called the Ultra Jam so we had to, Aeroflex built us cameras. We shot a week with the old stuff, and then we got the new cameras and nothing worked in conjunction. So we had to reshoot that. So it was difficult. It was so difficult. And, but the bottom line was, I thought we did some really good work, except I didn't have final cut. And I cut the movie about 2 hours, like 1 and 2. And, but Landsberg decided to cut like 20, 25 minutes out of it. So it was quick and just not much story,
right.
But it had a big audience. It's interesting. I talked to Kevin Smith, did a podcast with him, and a lot of Greg Nutera, a lot of these guys that are in their like 50, 55, they're huge fans because they were kids then. Jaws 1, 2, 3, there's their favorite thing. So
yeah, it was, recently in the last year, the American Cinematheque actually showed Jaws 3. And it was cool to see it on the bigger screen because I never had. I know we ran over time a little. I guess there's so much more I could talk about. I love Close Encounters. I hope we could talk again about it. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Escape from New York, which you also worked on. Starman, you have a great body of work. But I guess one way to wrap it up would be, what would you say was your biggest lesson for Jaws? Something that was either like a light bulb moment where something clicked on by the end of the film that you hadn't realized at the beginning, or just something that you came away with that maybe changed your work habits, if there was such a thing, as you moved on to other films?
I'd like to say that there was, but my work habit was, I think initially was created on Night Gallery because I had to do so many sets, 25 sets a week, maybe 3 or 4 directors, and constantly coming up with stuff. So that was just constant thing with Jaws.
And I'm a fan of your work there because I'm a large fan of Rod Serling, and I love that show.
What a great guy. I had I just had one real call. I was sitting with him and Schwark. We finished an episode, and I said, Rod, I don't know how you do this. You wrote all those Night Galleries and Twilight Zones, And he looked at me, he said, Joe, I write them, but you make them happen. And I
That's
went,
really cool.
what? But, that's what we do is visuals. So it was, yeah, but Jaws was, I think, taking something that people said will never happen, it won't work, and we did it. And so it was a struggle, and then it was like, oh my God, it worked. And I remember I was off doing some rafting someplace in Northern California, and I came in a little town, and there were lines of people. I was telling this girl, what the heck is that? And I followed the line of people, and it was Jaws. And then I think that was a moment that I realized, oh my God, they're lining up to see this movie. So yeah, that was, very inspiring.
Well,
And,
as we celebrate the 45th anniversary of Jaws, it was really cool to be chatting with you. I think you're a fantastic artist, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Joe, thanks again. I hope we could chat again.
All right. Take care. It was fun.
Take it easy. And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks to production designer Joe Alves for joining us for a discussion about working on the original Jaws, which is having its 45th anniversary. And you could buy a Blu-ray or 4K of this amazing, amazing film. And the picture looks perfect, the sound is perfect, and it's packed full of awesome extras. So as we're in the middle of summer now, or the beginning of summer, not the middle, I would highly suggest you checking that out if you've been looking to rewatch Jaws, because now you could have an optimal viewing experience. Of course, while you're looking for things to do, we hope you'll support us over at Backstory Magazine. You could save $5 using code SAVE5 at backstory.net. It'll save you $5 off a 1-year subscription, which will give you all of our latest issues. It also give you the full past year's worth of issues in our archive. It's an archive that we are expanding by going further back of further older issues. So you could look forward to that as well. And look, your support is crucial in times like this. And we are working on a new issue of Backstory, some of which has things in it that I've been working literally for years to get into the magazine that I'm very proud of. So when issue 42 comes out, it's going to be great. And your support now means that it'll help us make issue 42 just a bit easier. So I hope you'll consider that as well. But thanks for tuning in. If you didn't know, we are doing this as a Zoomcast podcast. That means for you iTunes and Spotify listeners, if you haven't gone over to the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, you could see the video of the Zoomcast there. So at certain points when Joe uses visual cues, like storyboards, like different art and stuff like that, concept art, you could actually see him hold it up to his camera at those moments at the Backstory YouTube webpage, Backstory Magazine YouTube webpage. Anyhow, this podcast, Zoomcast, is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2020, all rights reserved. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.